Hey, Wayne Fox. Recently, my friend Randy Collier did a video about solving a rather annoying problem with Lightroom. If I select an image here and then I go to the Develop module and I take a look at the lens correction screen, you'll notice that Remove Chromatic Aberration and Enable Profile Corrections is disabled. I haven't really figured out a reason why this can't be turned on as the default because I've never really seen a problem that's this caused. I've never seen chromatic aberration on that causes a problem. And I've never really noticed profile corrections causing a problem. So I'd rather have them enabled automatically and then maybe turn them off later if I think there's an issue. So his solution was to obviously make the change and then to create a develop preset, which would then include just those two steps. And once he created it, he would use that preset when he imported images from that camera in the future, or from any camera in the future. So the advantage of that is that if you have multiple cameras, that method works for all of them without any problem. There's another way that I think is maybe a little different, and the advantage of this way is that once you set it up, you really can't forget to do it, and it also lets me show the power of some other things that can be done. If instead of doing that way, once I've made a change in my develop panel here, if I go to the develop menu and I select Set Default Settings, I can now update the default settings to be the current settings in my Develop panel. Now this includes anything I've done in that panel, not just those two checkboxes. So you want to be real careful here. Notice that this is specific to a camera model. So for example, this is an A7R2. If I were importing files from an A7R3, this would not apply. So I would have to do the same thing to that camera's model as well and create a new default setting for it. Also notice it says please note these changes are not undoable, which implies that you can't undo them. All that means is you can't use Control Z or Command Z to undo anything. You can certainly go back and restore the defaults, and you can certainly go to the images you've imported with these and disable those checkboxes and put anything back to the way you want it. Or if you restore defaults and then go back and reset the images, that would be the same as importing them without that default. So it's not that you can't undo it, you just can't undo it with the command keys. So if I update to current settings, now that is now the default for that camera model. And in fact, to show that, if I go to the next image here and I hit Command-Shift-R, which basically resets it to the status of being imported, you'll notice that those two checkboxes are now on. So it's pretty easy to enable those defaults for new pictures if you haven't done anything else to them, and by just resetting them. Now to show a little bit more how this works, another thing that you might decide you want to do with the camera is you might decide that there's a different profile that you want to use. Adobe has come out with a lot of different profiles that are available. Camera matching profiles are engineered to look like what the manufacturer has on the back of your camera, and a lot of times they'll have a different profile. You might say, you know what, I like what this profile does by default better, so I can do the same thing. I can change it in the profile. I can go to my default settings, or I can go to set default settings. I can say update to current settings. Now any image that I import from now on will have, I'm going to hit Command R to reset those, we'll have that profile as the default, and of course we'll have the lens corrections as the default. Now this includes anything at all that you can do in this panel over here. For example, if you want to always have a slight vignette, you can put that on there and that can be the default. If you want to change the way that sharpening is handled, you can do that and have that be the default. So it's a pretty powerful thing, and the nice part is that when you import, you don't have to remember to turn it on by using a preset. The only thing you have to be aware of is that you have to do it for each camera model that you shoot. And if you turn on this checkbox in your preference panel, make default specific to camera serial number, that means that it only applies to one specific camera body if you have multiple bodies. So anyway, that's the power of the set default settings choice. Be careful with it because you don't want to set a default that isn't really something you want to apply most of the time. But for me, changing the profile is kind of a logical one, as well as enabling those two checkboxes. Well, I hope this tip is helpful, and until next time, thanks for watching.